Thank you for listening to the Distinguished Physical Education Podcast, where we discuss best practices in PE and share expert insights from thought leaders in the PE community. My guest today is Kelly Donnelly. Inspired by the Girls on the Run curriculum, Kelly changed careers and has been teaching physical education in Denver public schools for 7 years. She is passionate about using movement to teach standards-based social skills to her students. Kelly earned her Master of Science in Kinesiology from Oregon State University with certifications in physical education, teacher education, and adapted physical education. She spent 3 years teaching middle school before transitioning to Ashley Elementary, where she has taught for the past 4 years. During the 23-24 school year, she had the unique opportunity to welcome over 200 migrant students, primarily monolingual Spanish-speaking learners, doubling the school's population within 2 months. This experience brought both challenges and gifts, from rapidly learning Spanish to adapting her approach to teaching PE and finding new ways to build connections through shared learning and understanding. In this episode, Kelly and I discuss the challenges that come with teaching English language learners, how to overcome being nervous or overwhelmed about teaching students who speak a different language than you, strategies for teachers in similar situations, techniques for quickly learning key words and phrases in another language, and other topics. It's been a pleasure to support Kelly over the years, though all the credit goes to her for her dedication to learning Spanish and implementing strategies to support her English language learners. Rather than seeing language as a barrier, she embraced it as an opportunity to grow as an educator and strengthen her connections with students. I've been fortunate to feature incredible teachers from across the country on this podcast, and it's always a joy to welcome a Denver teacher back. And now I bring you Kelly Donnelly. Kelly, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I've done several episodes recently on topics that I have very little experience with. We did one on planning field day a couple weeks ago. There were others on incorporating dance or yoga into physical education. And this is another topic that you and I are going to talk about today, where I'm just really excited to truly be a learner. So before we dive into strategies that you've used to support your students, can you share a little bit about your background in teaching and what inspired you to start learning a different language, in this case, Spanish?
Yeah. This is a second career for me. I started as a middle school teacher once I started teaching, and that was a learning curve. At the time, I didn't really believe in rules. So once I became a teacher, I was like, oh, right, rituals and routines are necessary. Student voice is necessary. Creating those positive relationships with the students plays a huge role in behavior management and in actually being able to teach what it is that you want to be teaching. After 3 years in middle school, I transitioned over to elementary, where I have been for the last 4 years. And my school is a Tinley school. Basically, we offer instruction in both English and Spanish. So we've always been a school that offers dual language. And the intention is that when they come to specials, we speak English, and that helps our language learners learn English from a native English speaker. And for my first 2 years at the school, that worked just fine. I would have demonstrations into sentence stems and some things translated on my board. And when necessary, bilingual students would translate for our monolingual students as they were transitioning into English. But last year, our school went from 200 students to 400 students in the course of 2 to 3 months. And those new 200 students were mostly monolingual Spanish speakers. So it really felt like overnight I had to learn Spanish, which you can't do overnight.
I'm looking forward to hearing the techniques and strategies that you used to learn another language and better serve your students. I do remember, of course, the middle school that you were at and how important it was to establish that strong foundation that you talked about. Before you started learning Spanish, though, in this role that you have at Ashley Elementary, what were some of the challenges or concerns that you faced when teaching students who didn't speak English?
My general concern was, am I the right person for this job? Am I capable of teaching the students what it is that they need to learn? And can I teach them how to throw and catch? Sure. But really for me, PE is about teaching those social emotional learning skills. How do we treat each other? How do we identify what we like? How we respond to situations? How we identify our emotions? So much of kids learning those skills is through play. And that's really what I see physical education as, is that opportunity. So I really questioned, am I the best person to do this? And well, how do I do it? Regardless if I'm the best or not, it's my job and I have to do it and I want to do it. So how am I going to get it done? So the challenge really was, can I structure my lessons around social and emotional learning skills? Because so much of it is verbal communication, and I do not have those verbal communication skills. So I had to realize I actually do need to focus more on standard one and break down the what does it mean to throw and catch and, all the other standard one skills, and use that as a way to teach the English language and for me to learn the Spanish language.
Those are concerns that a lot of teachers are going to have, being put in that position where they're in front of students who are learning the language, right? And that can feel really intimidating. How did you overcome your own nervousness? I don't know if you felt nervous or if you felt anxious. If you did, how did you overcome those? And what advice would you give to others just on overcoming or sitting with those types of emotions?
It was more overwhelming, especially for me in that moment, because it all came on so fast. It was overwhelming, and it was a question of, how do I get this done? And then once I realized, okay, I'm here, I have to do it, it was, well, where do I start? I didn't necessarily feel uncomfortable speaking to students. It was more of a, what is the best approach to take? And so our bilingual teachers were amazing, and they came to us over and over again, us only English teachers, and said, however you need help, let us know. So I sat down and I said, okay, the best way for me to initially build relationships and have general management in the classroom is to be able to communicate those rituals and routines. So I came up with a list of the standard things that I say to students. Welcome to class, we're sitting on the circle, or everybody sit on a red, blue, green, yellow circle. Standardizing what it is that I say, and then making that list, sharing it with my bilingual teachers and saying, will you please translate this for me? I use Google Translate for a lot of things, but these things I really felt were important to get a human's feedback on, because I wanted it to be in the friendly language that makes sense to kids. So once I was able to get those key things translated and learn those key phrases, I at least could always come back to something. I knew how to get kids to get back to their seat. I knew how to make sure everybody had their equipment on the ground, make sure that we had one person demonstrating how to do a skill before everybody does a skill, right? So those simple things that helped me to be able to say at least the basics.
I think that's brilliant. So you weren't necessarily concerned yet about students being able to articulate their learning, or you being able to communicate the cues to a skill in their language, in Spanish. That was going to come a little bit later. You started out with just the foundation of your learning environment, how you wanted students to enter the gym, what you wanted them to do with their hands and feet and voices, where you wanted them to sit, what transitions in the lesson might look and sound like.
Exactly. Thank you for putting the PE language to those rituals and routines. But yeah.
So that's like a great first step for teachers who are starting to feel, or maybe already feel, a little bit overwhelmed, and they think they need to just immediately start communicating in Spanish to their students. You're saying they don't have to do that overnight. Just start with routines and rituals and the culture that you're trying to set up in your gym. I also love how you said you can always go back to that. So if things in the lesson started to go a little bit off script, you were able to pause the lesson and remind students, this is what the start and stop signal sounds like. So I'm sure you had start and stop translated into Spanish was one of your first phrases. This is what our home base rows look like.
Yes. Cuando la música empieza, when the music starts, right? We'll get back to your circle. So those things were so important. And as we're discussing, I'm also realizing another thing that was super important, especially because it was 2 new students today, 3 new students the next day, and it was constant new students. So it also really helped to give the whole class instruction. And then you have those one or two new kids that are still running around doing whatever it is that they want to do. And not just demonstrating, but doing it with them. Like, hey, come with me. Here's what we do. And even if I didn't have the Spanish language to be able to share that with them at that time, taking their hand or guiding them to their spot, sitting down with them, showing them what crisscross applesauce looks like, saying hands in your lap, repeating things. So they are also learning the English language as we're learning those rituals and routines. Because eventually I have stopped using the Spanish language and started just saying it the way I would normally say it. But because I met them at some point where they were at and was able to say it in a way that they understood, now they understand it when I speak English because they've been learning as I've been learning.
Okay, so that's really important to remember then. The goal was for you to first be able to communicate with students in a way that they're going to understand, but the long-term goal was for you to also teach them the English words and phrases that you wanted them to learn as well, right?
Yes, and especially at the beginning of this year, we were told, hey, specials teachers, only speak English in your classes. And we were like, I'm not sure that that's possible, but we'll try. And so it became very clear it is not possible. I think technically our minutes are English minutes, but to me, the best way to make those connections with kids, but also like in my class, I can't only speak in English or it will not be safe. So I have to speak in a way that students will understand first. And when I say I'm speaking in Spanish, I'm speaking in the Spanish that I know. I am not fluent. I don't want anybody out there to think that I really know how to speak fluently in Spanish. One of the beautiful things is I still have students, our bilingual students, who correct me to this day. But back to your question of, yes, speak in a language they understand, then slowly wean myself off of that and wean them onto more English.
When you first started speaking in Spanish to students, I'm thinking back to the example that you just gave a couple minutes ago. You spoke in Spanish and then you said the same thing after it in English. Is that a cadence that you always used right from the beginning? And what are the advantages of doing that?
Yeah, I will say I didn't do it right from the beginning because I didn't always have the words right from the beginning. But as I started learning Spanish, yes, because A, the tone is the same. B, it's like in any classroom, your rituals and routines are your rituals and routines. So if I can use both languages, my brain is automatically going to say it in English. So when I forget to also say it in Spanish, they've heard it at least a half dozen times today in both languages. So the next time that I say it and I forget to say it in Spanish, they've heard it before and they can think, oh yeah, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to do.
So just like giving students reps in a physical skill, like most PE teachers are used to, you're giving them multiple reps adhering to a direction or an expectation in both Spanish and English.
Yes.
I think we're going to talk about this later, but while it's fresh on my mind, how did you start to memorize these words and phrases? Like what resources did you use? I remember one time I came into your gym, you did have some things up on your board, like Spanish phrases that you wanted to remember. Students may have looked at them also, but I think they were a resource for you. You can tell me if I was correct in remembering that. What else did you use to just help you remember what it sounds like to say, please walk silently to the blue line?
So as I said, I asked our bilingual teachers to translate those key phrases for me, and I kept them with me. I would have them on my cart next to my computer. If I needed to bring them with me, I would bring them with me. I also heavily rely on Google Translate. So that is a device that's in your pocket at all times. So it was easy to just pick up. There's a history button where I've translated this thing a couple times. If I click history, it'll come up for me. The thing that you're talking about, which was super helpful to me, my students last year and still this year, they know I'm learning just like they're learning. So I had a poster on my wall that said language that you have learned and words that you have taught Miss Donnelly. I had it translated in Spanish at the time, and I don't remember what it is right now, but like palabras te enseñame or something like that. So often what I would do, I would have the steps to a skill, but then I wouldn't actually know what throw was. There are like multiple words for throw. So I would say, okay, primero en T, okay, paso y twist E, and then I would like go like this, and then the kids would just shout. For those of you listening, I'm now doing the throwing motion. And when I didn't have the words, our bilingual students would either shout it out or our students would see me doing it and they would shout out the word that made the most sense to them. So then I would write those words down. Oh, what was it? And so I had a whole wall of my own of words that I learned, words that they taught me, so that we were having a mutual, I'm teaching you, you're teaching me, and we're all learning together.
That's a theme that I'm picking up from you, because earlier you said that you always told your students that you were open to corrections. So you must have communicated that to them pretty clearly and like been vulnerable about it, that I'm going to do my best to learn a new language. And if I mess up a word or two here and there, tell me what words I need to fix or change. And then you just continued on with that level of transparency. Like, I don't know all the words to, or I forgot one of the Spanish words to the overhand throw. So I'm going to show you what it looks like and you all can help me out with that one.
Yes. Me olvidé la palabra. ¿Qué es la palabra? Like, that is something I just say all the time.
And for people like me whose Duolingo app is super angry at them, what does that mean?
Oh, I forgot the word. What is the word?
Perfect. So it seems like you've become somewhat proficient in Spanish, although I know when I've spoken to you about that, and right now you're laughing, you're very humble about that. What were some techniques or tools that you used or developed or implemented that worked well as you were learning some of these Spanish phrases?
Demonstrations. I mean, PE teachers were doing demonstrations all the time anyway, but it became all the more important to make sure that anytime I was explaining any skill, any game, the way we're supposed to treat each other, right? Like, all those things now had to be modeled without question. And figuring out, okay, do I just have my students that understand what I am saying doing the demonstration? Or often what I would do is, yes, I'm going to select a student who generally knows what I'm saying to demonstrate. And then once kids are seeing, okay, this is the activity, I might invite in a new student, a student that doesn't understand English, and then see if they understand it or help them to move to where they need to go. And then that would help me know, well, do they know what to do or do they not know what to do? And help to clarify as necessary. So watching students complete a task would help me understand if they understand or if they don't understand.
I feel like other English language learners who just joined your school might also then see other students who they know are brand new doing the activity or the instruction or the expectation exactly the way that you described it and demonstrated it. And they might feel like they could also do the same thing.
Yes. And following it up with lots of positive praise. I'm a huge positive praise type of person. It's a big thing to listen to somebody that when you don't know what they're saying. So if they're able to demonstrate just based on my explanation and demonstration of a skill, then I really give them a lot of positive praise and high fives and well dones and wow, you're such a good listener.
I still want to hear more strategies that you have, of course, but I have a lot of follow-up questions for you. You've got me thinking now about how we balance teacher talk time and student activity time, because you just mentioned it's difficult to listen to someone who's not speaking the same language as you. It can be difficult to listen to someone who's going on and on and on in the same language as you. So was that something that was fresh on your mind? Like, I need to communicate my expectations in English, maybe even in Spanish, as you're starting to learn these words and phrases. I also need to be more explicit with my demonstrations than I would in a class of just English speakers. But at the same time, I can't have this going on for 5 or 6 minutes of me just talking and demonstrating things. How did you balance all of those different components?
Clear and concise. And again, basic teacher tool. How do I make this as simple as possible so that we can all get moving? And if I need to break it down further, fine, but we're going to get started and make it as clear and concise as possible so that we can all move our bodies or get a piece of equipment in our hand, play for a minute, pause, add on. So that really helped.
You're making me think, our instructional curriculum specialist, our friend, Jen Smith, sometimes we're working with a teacher whose goal is to shorten their instruction time and then to increase student activity time. And the way that she has been coaching teachers on that is to have them imagine that they're calling a timeout, like in a basketball game or something. So you've got, all right, maybe it's not 60 seconds. Maybe we can like bump it up to 2 minutes or something, but you've got a short period of time to do exactly what you just said. Get out a bit of important information, let students go off and be active, and then build on that next time so that you're not having students sit for 5 minutes listening to you. And some of them might not even understand what you're saying, right? Because they're still learning English.
Exactly. Yep.
Did you have any other strategies that you can think of? So as you're learning these different words and phrases, are there any other strategies that you want to share with folks before we move on to the next section?
Yeah, the other basic things that I did were just having translations on my slides. I have a TV and a PowerPoint. So having the translations and also sentence stems. So if there was a question or if I wanted kids to think through things, having those sentence stems posted so they're seeing the words and can use those as resources.
How did you know when you wanted students to use a sentence stem in English or a sentence stem in Spanish? So like, let's say you're asking them a question about the steps of the overhand throw. Can you tell your partner what comes first, what comes second, and what you do last when you're throwing overhand? How do you know if a student's ready to try to use the sentence stem in English or if they should just be more comfortable and like articulate their knowledge using it in Spanish?
I do it a couple ways. I'll have them both posted in both English and Spanish. And at the beginning of the year, I presented it as you can speak in whichever language that you feel most comfortable in. And then from there, work on purposeful pairing so that they can listen and speak in a language where they feel comfortable. As I know that students are progressing in their language, I will purposely pair them with somebody that only speaks English so that they have to listen or speak in English. Or I will enter conversations as they're happening and I will state the sentence stem in English, have them repeat it, and then they might answer the rest of it in Spanish because those are the words that they know. But at least for that first part, they're practicing those words in English. And I base it off of what I know of my students and how I have seen them progress through the year or the years.
I ask that because you've like expanded my understanding of this whole conversation, which is my initial thought was that you just want to be able as the teacher to communicate with your students. So that's why you put all these different strategies into place, translating slides, trying to learn Spanish phrases, etc. But what you're making me understand is that you have like a dual purpose. You also are trying to teach students as the PE teacher, you're also trying to give them additional opportunities in your class to be able to learn English as well.
The way I look at it is we're teachers. Yes, I'm a PE teacher, but like we're teachers of life. Kids come to school and they don't know what they don't know. And our students that are new to the country are also here to learn English, right? And like if they are going to be their most successful selves, they're going to need to learn English. And we want them to have all the words and all the capacities and facets of life. So I see it as a necessity. It was like just a surprise to me at first of like, oh, okay, I don't really necessarily have all the tools to do this. And then as I started doing it, I said, I might not know, I don't know, the technical teacher term for how to teach kids dual language, but we can all do our best. And I go to our ELD teacher and things like something that I had learned is like making a connection. There's a symbol where you connect your fingers together. So diferente and different, that's a connection. So I can start doing those things in my classroom as well.
You're demonstrating just an incredible level of flexibility and willingness to learn something that's just entirely new and different to you. So I just have so much respect and admiration for that. It seems like you picked up Spanish pretty quickly. Of course, this is out of necessity. I know a lot of teachers might want to do the same, but they aren't exactly sure where to start. We do have technology like our favorite Duolingo app. What are some quick language learning strategies that PE teachers can use to learn the key phrases and commands that you were talking about earlier? You mentioned using colleagues in the building. Can you think of anything else that might be helpful for teachers?
I relied a lot on students, and part of me always felt bad for doing that. But especially at the beginning when it was just like, we have like 5 new kids today, and those 5 kids need this to be translated. I don't have the language. We don't have Spanish speaking paras, right? So my students did a lot of the translation at first. And at some point I was like, I don't know that this is okay. I'm going to have to ask these students' parents if they're okay with this, because as much as it is amazing that these bilingual students are being a leader and taking this on, that's also a heavy load. Sometimes it was little 6-year-olds that are translating everything that I was saying. I was like, this is beautiful, but also not exactly what school is meant for. So I would make sure to reach out to those parents to be like, hey, you know the situation. Your kid jumps up and wants to help every time that I'm trying to get a message across. Are you okay with that? As much as I was a little bit uncomfortable with that, it was also beautiful, and it allowed me to listen, and learn from them. Eventually, we did hire Spanish-speaking paras that traveled with each classroom. So they would come with us and they would start doing the translations. And again, listen. And then as you're listening, so like a common phrase, puedo tomar agua. The direct translation is, can I take water? Now that's different than English, right? So when I would hear the phrases that are common, I would then break them down. What is the literal translation? So that then I can start understanding how the language works a little bit better. And then it also helped me understand, oh, these are why our bilingual students sometimes use these phrases in English the way that they do. Can I take water? That's not something that we would typically say, but now I understand why they say it that way.
Were you trying to capture any of these phrases while you were listening to students when they would come up naturally during a class? Would you take notes on something, or like, how did you remember all this? And when did you put in the time to try to memorize these things?
Often it would be like in a moment, I'd be like, can you say that again? Or escribir por mí? Like, can you write that for me? So I would have them write it on my whiteboard so that I could see it. And then I might type it into Google Translate or have them say it again so that I could see it. Because Google Translate's great in that as they're talking, it's writing it out. So then you're hearing it and you're seeing it. And for me, that's very helpful. I would also say, you brought up Duolingo a couple times. That was huge in my language development. It really just helped to provide those basic concepts, like basic words, basic phrases, and then simple conjugations of the most commonly used verbs so that I had a better understanding of how to form sentences and how to make sense of what kids were saying.
That's good for me to know, because when I do use the Duolingo app, I often leave wondering the things that I'm learning in here about how to get a haircut or brush your teeth. That's not necessarily going to help me in my job, because the time that I would use Spanish would be with teachers and with students, or maybe with building leaders.
Yeah.
But you're kind of putting it into perspective for me that maybe I shouldn't really worry so much about the content of what I'm learning as much as I should be appreciative that it's giving me like just a better understanding of the language that then I could transfer into language that's going to be relevant to my role.
Yes. And then I would also say, I think the only way that I have learned the amount of Spanish that I have is because I'm immersed in it. So I would say to any language learner, go listen to people, talk to people. You can talk to your Duolingo app all you want, but you don't get any real validation from that. Some of our moms tell me like, nope, say it again in Spanish. They make me talk to them in Spanish because they know that I can. And just like their kids, when I say it wrong, they're going to correct me and teach me the right way to do it. So it's important to talk to people and to listen to people, because then, is the word colloquial, you're hearing it the way that people actually speak, and you're learning how to say it the way that is most natural.
Absolutely. I feel like I don't have much to add to this conversation, and I'm just trying my best to ask you smart questions. But you did make me think of one thing. A few years ago, I had the idea for a teacher who was writing keywords and phrases on note cards to get one of those wristbands that quarterbacks use. So I actually bought a handful of them on Amazon. They weren't that expensive. They were like $7 or something each. And I bought a few of them. And whenever a teacher would say that they're trying to learn various Spanish phrases for PE, I would just give them one of them. And this one teacher loved it because you can write down a whole bunch of words in there. And I would see him in the middle of class, just, look at his arm and then be like, rojo linea. And the kids knew what line to go to. And then eventually he could get rid of that phrase because he memorized it because he used it so many times. So that is my contribution to the conversation on strategies for learning Spanish phrases and words.
It's a beautiful approach. That was my word wall, right? But I would just make a bigger deal of it, like run over to it so the kids knew that I'm trying to find a word. But that's wonderful.
That kind of brings us into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is how you create an environment where your English language learners feel included and valued. And I think one of the ways that you've already communicated how you do that is to show that you're a learner right there along with them. And that when you learn a new word, you're going to go run over to the board and write it down and then use it as many times in class as you can. That's one way that you can make your ELLs feel welcomed and valued in your class. What are some other strategies that you have for creating that environment where all students feel safe and welcome?
This one to me is no different than the same way you do it with every class. And it's a warm welcome at the door. With every new student, I do a bienvenido a mi clase. Esta es educación física. Soy Miss Donnelly. ¿Cómo se llama? Right? With a warm welcome, I usually get down on a knee, get at their level, and just really let them know I see you and I want to know who you are. And lately, we're still getting new students, and I tell them, I will forget your name. And I'm going to have to ask you probably 10 times today and probably 10 times tomorrow. So I just try to be as real with them as possible and then use them as a demonstrator, as a leader, as soon as I can, as soon as we get a new student. Once I feel like they feel comfortable and they would be open to that, but making them a part of the class or maybe trying to learn one thing about them or saying, oh, wow, they're new and I saw they're really good at this thing. We're about to get partners. I suggest somebody go with so-and-so. And really trying to make sure that everybody feels a part of what we're doing.
What that all says to me is just how intentional you are about creating this environment, from meeting students at their eye level to greeting them in Spanish to purposefully partnering students up with peers that they might feel most comfortable with. I mean, those are all just like really intentional interactions that you have with students in order to make that environment feel safe and welcome. A big part of that welcoming environment also comes from students and their classmates. What role can other students play in supporting English language learners, and how do you foster that peer support in a way that benefits everyone?
So kind of piggybacking on the question we were just discussing of making somebody feel welcome, I might also say, so sometimes we start class in the center circle, and I might also say, oh, we have a new student today. Let's let them know what we do when I say eyes. And in my class, when I say eyes, we clap once, it's voice is off, eyes on the teacher. When I say ears, we clap 2 times, eyes on the teacher, voice off if we didn't do it right the first time, right? So I will ask the students, oh, let's teach them what we do so that the class feels like leaders, so that they're all reminded that their job is to be a leader and do what they're supposed to. Another thing is, and I learned this throughout my PE trainings, is students choosing their partners in a polite way and using that leveling from 1 is it doesn't look so good, and a 4 is you're partnered with your best friend, and what does that look like? And having a visual teaching that lesson, what a 1 looks like and feels like, what a 2 and a 3 and a 4 looks like and feels like, and how do we want to feel when we want to work with somebody else, and how do we want other people in our class to feel when it comes to pairing. So I will try to remind students of that lesson when we get a new student so that we say, oh, how do we want to feel again when we're selecting partners? Well, yeah, we want to feel like we're at least at a 3. So let's make sure when we're finding a partner, we're making everybody feel good.
I feel like this is the first time I've heard about this partner strategy. Can you share a little bit more about what the 1, 2, 3, and 4 mean? Can you describe them for us?
Level 1, 2, 3, and 4, there's a really adorable video of like Disney characters that go along with it, literally playing a clip of a bunch of Disney characters. I do hand up, stand up, pair up, and you go hand to hand with a partner. And a one would look like, I don't want to work with that person, or like whining or complaining or walking away. A two would be like, okay, like no real energy about it, but you're not rude per se. A three is like, oh yeah, I feel good about this one. Cool, we get to work together. And a four is, I'm working with my best friend. This is the best. We do some sort of handshake. And the Disney video is hilarious and kids really get behind it. And I also have a poster that says level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And sometimes I will literally take it off the wall and bring it to our circle to remind kids, what level do we want to be at again? So that they can see, oh yeah, we want to be at a level 3.
It's just another way that you build up that culture in your room so that students know that they're going to be paired with various classmates throughout the course of the year. And we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable.
Yes.
One thing I'm thinking of is maybe some misconceptions that you've encountered when you're teaching English language learners in PE. And I'm wondering, how have your experiences helped to challenge or disprove any of those misconceptions?
One of the myths is that kids don't understand unless we speak their language or they speak my language. But language isn't just words. It's also seeing things. It's also the teacher demonstrating, a student demonstrating, just visually seeing what everybody else is doing. It is, as I was saying earlier, sitting side by side with them and doing it with them and repeating it. I think it's easy to say, well, they just don't understand because we don't speak the same language. But to me, that was really an eye-opener of, well, I have to figure out what else to do because they do understand. They're super smart. They're here and learning a new language literally every day of their life, every moment of their school day. They're brilliant. And it's us teachers that need to figure out a way to communicate with them in a way that makes sense if we don't have the literal words in language skills. So they're capable. And it just means taking a step back to reflect on what else can I be doing.
You're reminding me of one of our PE standards too, which is how to communicate verbally and non-verbally. So I feel like this is a strength that a lot of PE teachers have and that they could probably lean on while they're learning keywords and phrases in a different language. They can really emphasize the different ways that they could communicate with students non-verbally. And you've shared so many of those during our conversation today. As we wrap up, what is one key takeaway that you'd like PE teachers to keep in mind when it comes to serving their English language learner students in class?
The one thing that I would say for everybody to keep in mind with language learners is that they are a gift. They are a gift to your classroom. They're a gift to your personal growth. We can all get really stagnant and do the same thing day after day. And when a challenge, and it is a challenge to figure out, how do I communicate with this person when I can't speak to them? But seeing that challenge as a gift for you to grow and learn has been a great way for me to grapple with all of the changes that happened at our school, but also to just see my students in a different light and recognize just how wonderful they are.
You've got me feeling already so much more comfortable about this topic than I have been for my entire career. I've been in public education for 20 years, and this is a topic that I've just always been a little nervous or anxious about because I don't think that I didn't have the experience that you did, where I was forced to figure out how to do it. So I was able to get away with very basic keywords, very basic phrases, some translations on slides and things like you mentioned, but nothing like the in-depth strategies that you taught yourself and that you were so dedicated in learning about.
I just want to interrupt for one thing, because one thing that you just said is that I taught myself. I do not take any credit for anything that I've learned. I truly don't. Sure, I sat down and did Duolingo, but that's about the only thing that I did myself. My students taught me. Our paras taught me. Our bilingual teachers taught me. I would not have made it as far as I have if I didn't have the support of all of those people and our parents. The fact that our parents are entrusting them with their children to teach them things when I don't have the literal language is also a gift of grace and of trust. And I so appreciate all of those people that have helped me along the way. And I think that you have to rely on people along the way.
I'm with you. The community is so important, but you also have to be like open-minded enough and willing to learn in order to go seek out those resources. So I really appreciate you sharing these experiences with our listeners, because I think that this is a topic that a lot of people just feel a little nervous or anxious about. And I think that some of the strategies that you were so kind in describing today are going to really help out not just teachers, of course, but students as well. So Ms. Donnelly, thank you so much.
Yay, my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.